Hi there. Just before I get into the content of this video, I want to respond to a couple of comments I've had on the last one that were along the lines of you can never really get rid of rivalrousness. There's always going to be things which are scarce. Rivalrousness is not only rooted in scarcity, this kind of thing. And I agree with all of that. I'm not taking issue. Um, the point I was trying to make was that rivalrousness has torn apart civilizations in the past, right? And that unless Game B can address the question of rivalrous dynamics in the society and figure out a way of effectively incentivizing non-rivalrous and anti-rivalrous behavior, then the civilization will self-terminate for exactly the same reasons that civilizations in the past have terminated, and for the reasons that I've already gone into. So it's not, I wasn't trying to suggest for a moment that it's easy or that there's a ready solution out there that anyone can just snap their fingers and get rid of rivalrous dynamics. I wasn't trying to suggest that for a moment. All I was trying to say is that if it is not addressed, if a solution is not found, then it won't be game B. It will simply be the next iteration of game A. Now, of course, how we go about doing that is another matter. And that's kind of what the subject of today's video is about. The formation of decentralized collective intelligence, distributed sense-making networks, which have the capability to be way more effective and responsive than the existing top-down broadcast structures that we have. So in this video, I want to talk about the difference between the broadcast top-down modality of Game A's decision-making and sense-making processes versus the opposite of that, which is what Game B might look like. So decentralized, distributed networks of intelligence, of sense-making, of decision-making. And so, as I said in the first video, the broadcast modality that exists in Game A and has always existed in Game A is basically a top-down thing. So a few people at the top have the right, for whatever reason, to make decisions and to evaluate information around them, make sense of what's going on in the world, make decisions accordingly, and then pass those decisions down, and everybody else is expected to follow those. And I mean, and this structure, it's not just the government or the emperor or the king or whatever at the top. That structure exists all the way down. And so, you follow instructions from people above you and you pass instructions on to the people below you, and so on and so on and so on. And you see microcosms of this structure exist everywhere. I mean, I was a teacher for nearly 20 years, and the education system is exactly like that. You have one teacher standing at the front of the room, you have rows of children in front, the teacher imparts knowledge, the children absorb knowledge. It's broadcast. The teacher is broadcasting to their students, and it is the student's job to tune into the broadcast, listen carefully, and then be able to repeat it and respond according to the rules that they've been given. And to a degree, this is fine. I mean, it works, right? It's worked for a long time. So, it's not entirely invalid. It starts to break down when the people when the people who are qualified to speak and are telling everybody else what to do are not doing so in good faith, or are not doing so in the light of the best possible information and things like that. And until relatively recently, we as ordinary members of the society, all we could do really was tune into the TV or read the paper or whatever, receive the received wisdom, and that was reality, right? That was journalism and television and school and so on. They made sense of the world for us, and we acted on that information and acted accordingly. Now, however, with the internet, we have access at an individual level to a huge plethora of information, and this has changed everything. And so the old sense-making networks, the news networks, the established newspapers, this kind of thing, people are not listening to them anymore, and for very good reason, because they have, as they've been losing market share, in order to try and keep hold of that market share, they've become more and more polarized, more and more outrageous, and less sense actually comes out of them, and so people have started looking elsewhere. So this decentralized sense making has actually already started. I mean, this is very much in the process of happening. This shift away from big central information distribution networks to small YouTube channels and blogs and so on. This is already well underway. Now, if you think about it, this broadcast modality where only a few people get to make sense of the world and make decisions is a shocking waste of possibility, right? I mean, there are potentially millions of people who could be contributing to a thought pool on any particular idea or problem or whatever it might be. And so the decentralized networks would be able to potentially employ a far greater range of human potential than the broadcast network, than the broadcast modality ever possibly could. Jordan Peterson has likened this change in the media landscape as nothing short of a Gutenberg type revolution, the invention of the printing press. And I think he's absolutely right. But it's also very much in its infancy, nobody really knows yet what sort of shape it's going to end up taking. I think it was Jordan Hall. I'm pretty sure I heard him referring to it as kind of like an infant, right? This new emerging intelligence, this new emerging collective intelligence is like an infant right now. It can't hold its head up straight, it can't focus its eyes, it can't grab hold of anything, but it's absolutely bursting with potential. And I think to some people, at least watching this video, the fact that I can't sort of just lay out this is how these centralized networks are going to be constructed and this is what they're going to do and so on, that I can't just lay that out in clear terms is somewhat frustrating. But if I may suggest, this is a product of the fact that we have been brought up to respond to broadcast. We want to be presented with a ready-made solution and be able to just act on those instructions, right? Rather than contending with the idea that the important thing is to create the sense-making apparatus that can come up with the solutions, and that until you come up with the sense-making apparatus, and there is no, the solutions will emerge from that. There's no knowing what those solutions are going to be because they're complex. And this is what the next video is going to be about: is the complex versus the complicated. But the solutions that will emerge from these decentralized networks are going to be complex in nature because they've emerged from the interaction of complexity. So yeah, nobody can see in advance what they're going to be, and that can be a frustration. But as I said just a moment ago, this is a product of the fact that we've been brought up in a broadcast environment, and all we have been trained to do is receive instructions and act on them, right? And so the decentralized networks require of us as individuals that we are willing to shoulder a certain degree of responsibility for truthful communication and earnest communication and non-rivalrous communication all feeds into this. And it also leads, I'm going to make a whole separate video on this because I think it's really, really, really important, because it actually tackles all three of the things I'm talking about in this video: rivalrousness, broadcast modality, and complexity. It gets a handle on all three of these things. It's a really concrete, attainable protocol that everybody can start to practice, namely Rule Omega. And so the idea of Rule Omega is that everybody has valid perspective to contribute to a particular problem, if they're interested in it. And so these collective intelligences will be able to be far more responsive, far more creative than the existing static top-down institutional structures that currently exist in Game A. Game B's sense-making apparatus is likely to consist of this emerging type of intelligence where people all around the world who are interested in a particular area, whatever it might be, can communicate with each other and refine and hone ideas. So given their much greater flexibility and possibility for creativity, these decentralized distributed intelligence networks could potentially come up with solutions to how to, for example, incentivize anti-rivalrous behavior in society, whereas where solutions to things like this have eluded us in the past. This decentralized modality as well affords the opportunity to experiment on small scales, and if a new social construction or a new whatever, you don't have to roll it out across the whole world all at once, right? It can be contained in one place, and when it goes wrong, the mess can be cleared up and the damage limited. So the whole idea of one small group of people decides and everybody has to do it, this is dangerous when bad decisions are made. So this decentralized thing also has the huge advantage of allowing small scale experimentation to make sure things work before they get rolled out. And once again, just going back through the collapse of civilizations in the past, corruption and rotting from within of the institutional structures, again, has been foundational to the collapse of every single civilization that has gone before. And so, once again, if Game B is to be truly different and transformative and enduring and resilient, then it needs to tackle this thing which has come up again and again and again and again and again, namely that top-down broadcast networks collapse under the weight of their own bureaucracy and corruption in the long run every time. And so I think that's about all I have to say in this broadcast versus distributed networks. But in the fifth one of these, I'm going to do an episode on Rule Omega, which is all about how those networks could actually function. Okay, thanks very much for watching. See you next time.